we're going to start with one of the lists that I personally enjoyed this past weekend. Several lists are going to be quite interesting to go over because none of these lists are actually that similar. Maybe one or two will have, like a Gaz, but from the 4 lists I'm going to go over today, they're all quite different. Actually, I think 5 lists I'm going to go over today. So you're in for a treat today. Now, we're going to talk about Michael Geringer. So Michael Granger, as he has a absurd score because it's all 20s and then a big O0 at the end. This caught a lot of people in the community by surprise because they were like, what's happening with this Orc player? What is he doing? I'll tell you what he was doing because I'm very familiar with this list. Now, we have a Ghazghkull Thraka, Captain Badrook, Mazrog's Cragbag, Nob on Smasher's Quick, and a War Boss with Follow Me Lads. Quite typical pre-data slate. A lot of people will argue maybe Gaz isn't good, isn't worth it. Do the math. A 33% increase in damage is definitely worth it. It just goes into what you foresee yourself going into in the meta. And like I said, we're starting to see a lot of different matchups. I think Gaz is going to become more prevalent. Now here, he took 2 trucks, only 2, quite interesting. And then Def-Coptas, right? I'm one of the people that I wasn't too much of a fan of Def-Coptas. Happy Crumper is a big fan of Def-Copters. So to each their own, maybe it's in across the pond, as we like to call it. They have different kind of meta and archetypes they like to run, but Def-Copters are quite interesting. They're one of the only units to have Deep Strike in our index. Flash gets 2 units of Gretchen, and then one of my personal kind of secret keys that I'm starting to get into is the Kommandos. A lot of people think Mandos are too point costly. They're not effective. They don't really punch. They're kind of just existing sometimes. I think Mandos are, of course, like I always say, meta dependent, but also going into post data slate and the current season, as I like to call it, infiltrating and scouts are huge when you see yourself getting to the top tables. Okay. When you see yourself going into competitive matchups or lists as a whole, having something that can infiltrate to deny scouts, to take the center, to stop you from getting move blocked as an Orc player is a skill and a tool all in itself. So we'll get into that. I'm probably going to do a video on Kommandos next weekend. So we have 1 unit of Mega Knobs, but this is Gaz's entourage. So he chose to just run a big O unit with Power Claws. Normally people will run just 2 Mega Knobs. We're going with 5 today, which I kind of like. It's crazy damage. It's just a pretty huge profile to kind of hide, right? A 10-man unit of Knobs, always still going to be my favorite scalpel unit we talk right now. He has Follow Me Lads with that unit, so they're just chucking themselves on the field. I really like that. Disembarking them behind like a center terrain is actually the real key that you want to do, because then you can compound Here We Go with that, and you're just flying across the table with your scalpel unit to just destroy the enemy. Problematic unit. 1 big brick of Squighog Boys. I'm still running Squighog Boys currently right now too. Bandos are what allow you to still run Squighog Boys in some of the matchups and such. And then 1 unit of Storm Boys. I really like Storm Boys, but I actually only have 1 on my list too. It feels a little odd. I really like having 2. If you're running 2 and bikers, I totally understand that. But this list is something I can relate a lot to. What it is you can stage in different parts of the field and do tremendous damage, reach out, but yet you don't have a bunch of units that you're trying to hide necessarily, all these different transports and getting stuff. You immediately start with board presence. You immediately start with gas, saying, hey, if you come into the middle to contest me, I'm going to run out and utterly destroy you, not just because my unit can punch, but because we have Makari's lethal ability from 12 inches and on the wall. And here's the thing. All of us Orc players understand what that is. A lot of people in the Warhammer community don't even understand that the whole point of Gaz is actually Makari. It's not Gaz himself going in there that you're really that impressed about. Of course, when he goes off, you're happy about it. It's really the Makari ability that makes him so valuable. Let's look at his matchups. You have a couple notes here on his final matchup, the unit the faction he lost to, but let's look at all his matchups because it'll be fun. So context matters. So we have Tau. Tau was one of those armies that they're going to have a ton of scouting and infiltrating. So let's see. We have Unva, Cadre Fireblade, Commander in Battlesuit, Enforcer in Battlesuit. Here's the Breachers, Devilfish, Crisis Battlesuits, Ghost Keel. And then this is interesting, a little Hammerhead gunship. That's hilarious. 2 units of Kroot, and then here's the Pathfinders, followed by the Tetras. So this actually has less stuff than I would think some other Tal armies might have, just because a lot of the time they're like trying to keep you off. So they're going to scout into the middle of the table, put Pathfinders all up in the way, even maybe stealth suits. And this is all one of those things that if you have Mandos, you already start putting the pressure on them. They can't overwatch you. That's horrific for Tau, especially if you end up going first. And you're like, well, I'm just going to walk right into you because you can't punch me off you. So very interesting there. Put up a fat 20 on him. Let's look at the second matchup is Grey Knights. Grey Knights is one of those armies that you must know what they can do. Okay, and if you don't know just off the top of your head from doing your research and understanding their interactions, please ask your opponent. Hopefully he's a good sport and he lets you know that, hey man, I can just run away from you in a bunch of different ways and interactions, and if you fail charge, I'm dipping. And then we have the Grand Knight Nemesis Dread Knight, which is interesting that they decided to bring him again. Not surprised at all by the changes. They give you the firepower you need. The Librarians give you the ability to pop transport that you need from the Mortals, and then Caldrago, so you can get that nice reliable deep strike charge off, right? So we have But here's the thing: as an orc player, remember our control of the board and our board presence is what's always going to be a hard factor for the Terminators and the Grey Knights, because you're going to tell them you can only end up here, and if you drop within 3 of here, you know, you're not going to be able to charge me, and then I might counterpunch you. I still might OC you. I might just block you out of the objective. So doing all the technicalities of the movement phase is how orcs actually beat the Grey Knights. It's not just can I punch them. You know, we know you can punch. So we have Terminators, Terminator, and then 3 Nemesis Dread Knights, the Eversort Assassin, and henchman, right? So you can see the Grey Knight, Dread Knights are coming up, boys. They're being all over the place. If you don't have maybe some AP, good strength from the knobs, here's where the Squighog boys would feel good. You're going to have a problem with actually killing those if you're just bringing, like, let's say Truck Spam, for example, right? Which normally Truck Spam would actually feel kind of good into Grey Knight list because they can't pop them. Well, the Dread Knights help them into this. But when you're running a brick of gas and all that ability to just go off on the Dread Knights on that one turn, if they try to hold the board at all, you know, the Grey Knight player might underestimate you and get ran over, or just understand that the mission doesn't allow him to beat you in placement. So then we have his third matchup, which is Tyranids, Synaptic Nexus. This is one of those factions that can catch you off guard. Orc players are not aware of this. So we got Death Leaper, Neural Tyrant. We're getting a little different. Hormagons, okay. Biovore, Exocrine, Lictor, Neurolictor, Norn Emissary, Ravengers, Ripper Swarm, Screamer Killer, and Von Ryan Leapers. Another unit that's going to take the mid-table right away and be kind of annoying. Even if they don't charge you, understand orc players that they're going to just stand in the gaps and say your truck can't move here, your squid can't move here, your mouse can't move here. I'm just going to stand here and not even charge you for 75 points. If you don't have something like Mando to start taking the presence right away. Screamer Killers are quite good point value. You got to be careful. We're trying to deal with them as an orc player, not give them too good of trades. But what happens here with this Nexus fleet is they do have a built-in armor of contempt for one turn where they can just put it on their whole army, making it harder for you to really one-shot those Norn emissaries, even with your Squighog boys that are normally quite reliable into all Tyranid monsters. But this is where Gaz comes into play. You go, hey, not just can Gaz get in there and do some crazy damage if you roll with his dev wounds, because on the Mega Knobs on the wall will give him dev wounds, and he also gets +1 to hit, +1 to wound, so he's just wounding these guys on 2s, no problem. Right? The real thing is that Makari is giving 12-inch of lethal. So you're like, hey, Norns, you know what? These knobs are going to straight up one-shot you on this side of the table. I'm going to pop Unbridled Carnage here. My big unit of not power-clawed knobs and Gaz are going to punch this one Lorn Emissary over here. And then if they have to, Squighog Boy support, maybe I throw my Bomb Squigs into them, and all of a sudden he's chipped down. So I can see how the orc player can, with that specific list, can look at Nexus and go, hey, I can actually handle you, right? Because if you're running some of the older archetypes, you're going to start playing the I OC you game instead, which can also work. But remember, they have great OC, and Exocrines can start picking up units. So it does take some finagling. Having Mandos to maybe even stop one of those Norns from walking onto an objective would be amazing. So yeah, which is what I'm saying, guys. That's a skill in itself, and you're not going to get the points for killing. Just keep that in mind. Then we have his fourth matchup is Chaos Demons. Now, Chaos Demons hate to see orcs because we're just like anti-monster 4+. We normally have an issue with our lack of AP, but they just have invuln. So we're like, have to get chipped down. So we have Salaxi, Be'lakor, Changeling, and the Miska Slanesh. I didn't notice that. Sorry, I should have pulled that up. Keeper of Secrets, and then we have Demonettes, Nurglings, Pink Horrors, Plague Bears, Screamers, and then 2 Brigands. Not much to say here. They didn't bring a bunch of like the typical monsters, but you can see they still have the monsters they need of Be'lakor. This person's looking to deal with shooting armies to an extent, and when orcs come in, we're like, we'll just pick all this stuff up in nice little skirmishes, and this is resource allocation at its finest as an orc player. Then we have his second to that was the second last matchup. Sorry. And then we're going to go into his actual final matchup, which I brought some data sheets so I can show you what we're talking about here. So we have the Chaos Lord, Harkin World Claim, Sorcerer and Terminator armor, and a cultist mob, and Chaos Rhino, just one. And then these are what's interesting. 2 Predator Destructors, a Chaos Vindicator. I'm going to show you that data sheet in a second. Chaos Vindicators, a unit chosen, another big unit chosen for those lords. Here's the Forge Fiend, maybe coming off all the table edge and reserve to get that angle of fire. And the Raptors, obviously this is for Harkin. Harkin is a deep striking melee character, essentially. These guys allow him to come in and just actually destroy something. Not bad point value. It's a bit expensive of a missile. This is a unit you would want to fight in death against as an orc player. 2 units of Warp Talons, kind of like their version of Storm Boys. And then 2 Nurglings, which is why I said you would want Mandos, because you're going to be like, ugh. Either way, he did lose. I'm not saying they saved him this game, but we see how many of these units that we're going over that have the ability to start in the middle of the table. Sometimes if you go second, you just lose. Now we're going to look at the couple of little little combos here, right? Because here is the Chaos Predator that we were looking at. It's Predator. They were set with autocannons. So it's rapid fire 2, 48-inch range, hitting on 3+, not strength 9, -1, flat 3 damage. But it says right here on the side, when it targets an infantry unit, improve that by 1. This is also how they have it built out with Nurglings. They don't want to get shot, so Nurgling can now decide to put stealth on that. Not that we're going to necessarily shoot it, but if you really had to, maybe you'd be like, oh, I guess my flash gets to go into it. No, I can't. What's also interesting is he can compound that -1 ability with another -1 ability, right? So the Death Hex from the Sorcerator and Terminator armor on a 2+, you can target an enemy unit on 12 inches that's visible, and you say, now you get additional AP -1 when you're targeted. So the autocannon is now going to be, instead of AP -1, it's going to be AP -3. So when he's looking at that unit of Gaz and Meganobs that say, I'm going to check you in the middle of the table, once the Gaz and that Meganob unit have to commit, because at some point they are going to have to commit. They are a big investment. Predators are just going to pick all that unit up. All right. So that could be a possible issue of also why that was such a hard matchup for him, because he did end up losing that matchup and getting a fat 0. Maybe he went second and made the compound issue even more. Either way, I'm sure that player was an exceptional player. And of course, Michael Granger did a great job. Awesome. I love to see Gaz. I love to see that you weren't scared to bring the big unit of bodyguards and you played into your meta and the terrain that you had. So great job by you. And the fact that you made a splash in the community because everybody was confused by your score. Fantastic. So, from Michael Granger.